take 125,000. Dun, 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 dun. Hello. Hey. What do we have here? We have a map from 17.
Good evening. I'd like to call the October 19, 2020 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. White,
Here.
The October 19 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
I think I'm gonna get feedback. Mrs. Pardee, aye. Mr. Erdl,
Here.
Mr. Rock, Mr. Gould.
Here.
Is there a motion to excuse Mr. Rock?
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion by Mrs. Pardee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Hang on, I gotta figure out where this feedback is coming from because I can't,
Okay. One moment then.
I don't know if I can.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Is there any discussion? You must have the YouTube link open.
Yeah, I have the YouTube going.
Okay.
Let me see. Wait, let's see if that works. Learning in progress. Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Rock is excused. Will all those who are able please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
which
it
stands
stands one
one
nation,
nation
under God,
God,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
for all. Okay, first item of business is the approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes from October 5, 2020. I would note a correction. It's listed at the top as being a special meeting. This was a regular meeting of council on October 5th, so it should so reflect, not as a special meeting. Is there a motion or are there any other changes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, as amended?
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a motion to accept the minutes as amended by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. The minutes pass. Next is comments from the audience. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. Total time allowed 15 minutes per meeting unless otherwise permitted by Council Ordinance number 91-25. Is there anybody here on the Zoom call who would care to address the city this evening?
I would. My name is Richard Kenny. With your permission,
Yes, if you would just state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Richard Kenny, 4105 Meadowbrook Boulevard, University Heights.
Okay.
And what I'd like to speak to is the proposed change of waste disposal collection that is under consideration. I have and my wife have been resident in University Heights for 32 years. We raised our kids here, and fortunately they've moved out, but we're still here. My concern about the proposed change of the waste pickup involves 5 factors. I'll go through them very quickly. First is convenience. For those of you who lived here and had the opportunity to have your waste garbage picked up at the back of your house, you know that it's very helpful that you don't have to drag it out. It's not sitting on your tree lawn the night before, subject to getting knocked over. You don't have to drag it through snow or inclement weather. I live on Meadowbrook near the 5-way intersection. I have a double lot, and as a result, when the snow trucks come by, they throw a lot of snow up on my tree lawn. So this would involve me dragging it down the apron, going around into the street with it, and then hoisting it up sometimes into 2+ feet of snow. There's a fire hydrant there, and I regularly, 3 or 4 times at least in a season, end up digging that out so that it's visible. The other part is you don't have to be home to pull that back in. If for whatever reason you're away, it's always convenient just to have it in the back of your house, and you deal with it when you get back. Second would be the aesthetics. Not a lot to say there other than if you drive up and down streets where the garbage is pulled out in front, sometimes spilled onto the street and such, that's a negative. Third is safety. The traffic flow, I think, is affected by the proposed change much more so than the current situation. The current situation, the smaller vehicles come up the driveways and zip around, sometimes collecting 3 or 4 houses before they go to a truck and empty out there. They can go up and down the driveways without causing issues with the street. For streets like Meadowbrook, Silsby, Washington, that are main arteries, as those trucks go up and down that street and there's parked cars, or in my case, there's 15 cars that come around and sit to pick up their kids at Jesu, and that 15 is just at one time and it continues. Again, if there's any garbage collection at that time, that would be a nightmare. So I think looking at it from that standpoint, it's an unnecessary safety risk. Fourth is the cost, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the differential is $60 per household per year. Is that correct? Anybody know? I thought that was a number I had heard. Anyone?
I haven't heard it quantified quite like that.
Okay. I'm going to, just for the sake of discussion, assume that's the case, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If it's $60 a year, that's $5 a month. It's $1.25 a week. I pay over $9,000 a year in real estate taxes. I realize the lion's share of that goes to the school district, another chunk to the county. But from a standpoint of an individual homeowner, tax money has no face. If I'm paying $9,000 a year, it's the minimum amount to pay $60 more to have that benefit and convenience of having the garbage picked up. On the other hand, not having that, well, it's from a cost benefit ratio, it doesn't make any sense to me. The last item, and again, I thank you for your patience. The fifth item would be the prospect of service drop off. We don't know who we call or how we deal with a problem. The accountability disappears whenever the private sector steps in between our representatives and us. There's a profit margin, obviously, with the private sector to whom you'd be contracting. And forgive me, but oftentimes the service might end up having some sacrifice, or at least if there's a problem, there may not be as sensitive as our elected representatives are. So with that, I would strongly urge you to continue what we have. It's something that I value. I value more than having the snow removed from my sidewalks or most other things that are provided. As I said, I'd like to look into if it's $60 is the differential and the city's looking to save money, it'll be the happiest $60 that I've ever paid a year. And probably got the most benefit from. So with that, I would respectfully thank you for your attention, and you can move on to the next speaker. Unless you have questions.
No, that's quite all right, Mr. Kenny. We're not here to put you on the spot. But
Okay.
thank you for coming here this evening. We are having a public comment meeting coming up on Wednesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. I believe the link is already on the city's webpage if you'd care to participate in that meeting, and also for members of the general public who also have feedback on the solid waste study and the possible changes and investments that will need to be made to either preserve the current system or move to another system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Is there anybody else who'd care to address the city this evening? Looking to make sure there isn't somebody with their hand up. One moment. Doesn't look like it. All right, very good. Well, then that concludes our comments from the audience portion of the meeting, and we will now turn to the mayor's report and the taking of action.
I'm going to excuse myself so that, and please don't be offended.
No, you are more than welcome. We understand. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You do the same.
Today, Ohio reported 1,837 new coronavirus cases, the highest amount ever reported on a Monday. We made numerous records last week in new cases. On Wednesday, October 14th, we had 2,039 new cases, which was a record. And then on Thursday, October 15th, we had 2,178 cases, another new record. Finally, on Friday, October 16th, we had 2,148, which was not then a record, but was second only to the record set the day before. And then Saturday, October 17th, we had 2,234 new cases, which was yet another record. So we have 3 records set in new cases over 4 days. The 21-day rolling average of new cases is 1,515 cases. And we have had exactly 11,998 new cases since Wednesday. New cases are surging in Ohio. This is a national trend also, as it is happening in numerous states. The question is why? In the absence of contact tracing data, we have the speculation by Governor DeWine blaming family gatherings and not enough mask wearing. The direction from the CDC is similar. Small family gatherings are leading to more infections. Understandably, everyone is fatigued. We just had the high holidays. We are about to have more holidays. Halloween, Thanksgiving, and all of the winter holidays. Coronavirus does not take a holiday. It doesn't care if you haven't seen your mother since this has started. It doesn't care who you want to have over for dinner. It doesn't care if you think that having a wedding reception under a tent in your backyard is an acceptable idea. It doesn't care if you and your friends are playing flip cup in the front yard. I get calls, emails, texts every day, especially on the weekends. Parties, gatherings, more than 10 people in the front yard, in the backyard, cars parked on the street the length of a full city block, with a gathering presumably indoors somewhere. People see these things and they report it to me out of concern. There is no state order prohibiting gatherings of 10 or more on private property, though they are discouraged. There is nothing without more that the city may do to enforce a recommendation on private property. But that does not mean that it is a good idea. We all want normalcy. We won't ever get there by treating every day like a cheat day. We won't get there by treating every in-person interaction as an exception. We won't get there without discipline and renewing our commitment to being serious about minimizing our contact, about limiting the number of interactions we have to limit the opportunities of exposure and infection. If you are tired and have let your guard down, now is the time to pick it up again. Wear your masks, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, avoid unnecessary trips and encounters, get your rest, get a flu shot. We are entering cold and flu season. Your symptoms could be garden variety flu or the common cold, or it could be COVID-19. Stay home if you have symptoms, following rules carefully for self-isolation wherever called for. Seek assistance when you need it. Don't guess, be sure. Contact a medical professional. Seek testing, especially if you have symptoms. Self-isolate if you've been in contact with someone who has COVID-19. America leads the world in the number of dead. Over 225,000 dead in the United States. Over 5,000 dead in Ohio. 674 dead in Cuyahoga County. My heart goes out to all those affected, all those who have lost someone dear to them, all who have suffered. In the absence of federal or state leadership to do more, we must all have the discipline to protect ourselves, to avoid and limit the interactions that could result in infection. Please, do not stop taking this seriously. The things that we value, our families, our friends, our schools, our places of worship, our businesses, our economy, our culture, all count on our having the discipline to do this. Now, as a matter of housekeeping for this body, we've been holding our city council meetings on Zoom since April 6, 2020. Other city meetings, well, it may seem like a long time ago, but everyone should recall that we could not do this. We simply
All right,
can't.
let me listen to this. Okay, thank.
One moment. Could you mute Rocco, please? Thank you. This was because the Ohio Open Meetings Law requires that public meetings be held in person in a public place. The exception that allows for virtual meetings is due to expire on December 1st. The Ohio Municipal League is having discussions with the state legislature on the topic. SB 365 would extend the exception through the current and ongoing state of emergency. The Ohio Municipal League is proposing the virtual meetings continue until 30 days after the state sunsets its declaration of emergency. We don't expect action on this until after the election. We must keep an eye on this. The council and the general public are to be reminded that we do not, as a matter of right, have the ability to conduct public meetings online normally. This led to some hard feelings by some applicants over the cancellations of ARB and BZA meetings back in March. We are, of course, obligated to follow the open meetings law. We will continue to monitor and support the extension of the present exemption, allowing for virtual meetings. even though like most of you, I'm sure I too miss all being in the same room. Thank you. This concludes my report. Turn now to the agenda. There are two items that we need to add to the agenda by way of amendment. They were inadvertently left off due to an editing error. I know all council members received copies of two proposed ordinances to be read this evening on first reading, which would be ordinances 2020-52 and 2020-53. Mr. McConville, if it's all right by you, my thought would be to move to amend the agenda now to add these some other point in the meeting. They don't need to be first. We have both our prosecutor and Ms. Gleason here to make presentations to council. So, but I do want to make sure that these get on the agenda at this point before we begin. So that said, it seems like we would probably want to have two motions to amend, one for each of the agenda items. Is there a motion to add as agenda item, we'll say K, there's currently a K, but it'll be the new K. Ordinance number 2020-52, an ordinance amending codified ordinance section 1422.05 entitled Fees to update the city's contractor registration fees. Would anyone care to make that motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mrs. Pardee to amend the agenda accordingly. Is there a second?
Mayor, were these the items that were meant to be presented in the building committee? Councilwoman Blankfeld, are these the items that were meant to be presented in your committee?
Before we discuss, could we maybe have a second? And yes, these should have been on this. These would have been part of the previous building committee meeting that did not occur and is scheduled to occur now in a week and a half. And my thought would be, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, that they would be referred then back to the committee, but we would have our first reading.
A second.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. There is a second. Now, is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. McConville, can you explain? I know I had some discussion with Mr. Gould, just for the committee members and the council at large. I don't understand, or the mayor can answer us, this has been referred by the administration to the committee. It was on the agenda due to an error. The meeting didn't take place, but it is scheduled for the 29th for the committee to review and make recommendations. I don't understand why we're taking it off and putting it on the council agenda when it is still under review by the committee and would most likely happen at a November meeting. It's not on emergency. I see that it would be just first reading. I don't understand the urgency to put it on this evening. Nobody
Well,
had said anything to me, and I was confused when I saw the late in the day email.
Yeah, I'm in each instance, I'm following the direction of the mayor, who pursuant to the charter has the right to direct me to draft an ordinance and have it placed on the agenda. So I would defer the questions regarding urgency to the mayor, but
Okay,
I was asked to
perfect.
draft it and present it, and that's what I did.
Yeah,
Okay,
certainly.
I appreciate that. Mayor, maybe you can explain it to us.
Yes. We would like to have these, if there's going to be a change, as I expressed to council members when we first referred this, when administration first referred this at the end of the summer, we wanted to have these in place before the new year, or in place so that they could take effect in the new year.
Correct.
Which means that with the time allotted, unless they are passed on emergency, which they ought not be, we're not at a point yet where we ought to do that, though time is rather short. It would be 30 days before they would take effect, which would mean we'd have to pass them before the end of November.
Mhm.
And having them up on a first reading now and then referring them back to committee allows us to have them on for a second reading and at one of the November meetings and still pass them on time. I'm concerned the last building committee meeting didn't occur. The last time these were on the agenda for the building committee, we didn't get to them. I'm worried about running out of time. These things ought to be on for the new year. passed and in place.
which
and
we're in agreement with.
then I would like to get this on the agenda for this evening. The only reason they weren't on was due to an editing error when we rearranged, when we would discuss the order of things. When University Square was put on, these were inadvertently taken off. They would have been for first reading on the draft agenda that was put together, and they simply were not, they simply didn't make the version that went out.
Gotcha. So I appreciate the timing issue, and that certainly makes sense. Communicating this would have been helpful instead of the way it came about. So moving forward, if something like that comes about, give me a call.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Personally, I think the committee chair should have been informed and really had this discussion. I thought it was odd. I hate seeing these things added at the last minute because those of us who work.
Yeah,
we
I
have
didn't see it until after dinner.
to read all
So-
this, right, and know what's going on. But
No,
I
I'm,
want
work with me.
I
We
do
should have had
wanna-
a committee meeting, and we should have had this on the agenda, and I'm just trying to put this back together so that it's on.
And I just wanted to clarify, and this is to the law director, that even though this is on first reading, it goes to committee. If there are changes made during the committee meeting and we come back for second reading, we can make those changes and it will still be on second reading, correct?
Depends what the changes are.
Okay.
If the changes are substantive in nature, you would be considered back on first reading. If they're not material in nature, you would be considered to be on second reading.
There's a change in something like the timing, a date, an amount of time or a dollar amount. Is that considered substantive?
I don't think so. If you're changing something from $4 to $5, I don't think that's enough to be considered a material change. The issue really is notice to the public. Are they on notice of what you're legislating?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll on the motion.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Nay.
Okay, very good. This is now added as item K on the agenda. I would also entertain a motion to make item L on the agenda, ordinance number 2020-53, an ordinance amending codified ordinance chapter 1424 entitled Permits and Fees to update the city's schedule of building permit fees, and then to renumber the motion for an executive. I don't know if that's too many things in one motion, Luke. I'll just leave it.
No, that's fine.
Okay, well then, for clarification, it would renumber the executive session then as this letter M. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Erdl. Motion by Mr. Erdl. Is there a second? Is there no second for amending the agenda to add this item? All right, well, seeing no second, it does not look like we will be amending the agenda to add this other item on first reading. It's a companion piece to the one we just passed, but I'll ask for a second one more time. All right. There is no second. We will not be amending the agenda on that point. We now turn to the agenda. Item A is a report to the city from the city prosecutor. We have here this evening Stephanie Scalise, the city prosecutor, who joined the city as our prosecutor approximately 1 year ago. She expressed the desire to make a presentation and report back to the city here at this meeting with respect to the her work here in the first year, what's coming up. So without further ado and without stealing her thunder, I give you Stephanie Scalise, our city prosecutor. Stephanie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I hope you all forgive me for reading a prepared statement, but I was very nervous that I would actually forget something. So I want to thank, first of all, Mayor Brennan and our council members for this opportunity to provide you and the citizens of University Heights with an update on my first year in this position. I'll try to be brief, but also thorough. It's been just over 1 year since I was sworn in as the first woman to hold this position. At that time, I was running a busy law firm and had only just returned from maternity leave. What could have been an extremely stressful and difficult transition for me was greatly aided by the overwhelming cooperation and that I received from my colleagues. Right from the first day, the administration, staff, and members of housing department and police departments have supported my efforts. Every single time that I have looked to my bosses for support or advice, I have been very thankful to receive it. It would be impossible to overstate to you how happy I am with this job, specifically because I work with a team of wonderful people who every day represent what it really does mean to serve the public. Additionally, excuse me, Judge KJ Montgomery and her staff at the Shaker Heights Municipal Court have been eager to help me jump into the work and have also been team members in getting things done. The university community, the University Heights community has also been very welcoming. Within my first few months here, I met with leaders at Belfair JCB, spoke with a group of engaged citizens at the library, and participated in an important discussion about addiction with the sixth graders at JSU. I moved my law office into a space on Silsby. I brought my family to cheer on runners at the 5K and celebrate with you at the Harvest Festival. I enjoyed seeing all of you when attending the Mayor's annual State of the City report and the annual awards ceremony. I mentioned those events because I want to thank our citizens for accepting me and my new family into your ranks. Like all of you, I am grieving the necessity of our separation that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought. I really miss seeing you all. But as we continue to work through the challenges of these turbulent times, I continue to focus my efforts on one overarching goal. What can I do to make University Heights an even better place to live, work, and learn? And I want to tell you some of the efforts I've been making on how to do that. On matters of criminal law, I have been grateful for my partnership with Chief Dustin Rogers and the members of our police department. When I was hired, I asked for quite a few changes because I thought that they would improve the quality of prosecutions. I asked them to call me more often, run things by me more frequently, and allow me to have a lot more participation in the processes that they have, quite a bit more than other prosecutors may have wanted from them in the past. I held a domestic violence training. I insisted on setting up camp in their detective bureau on several occasions so I could rifle through all their files. And I was met with nothing but cooperation and support. During this past year, I have quite literally watched them put their lives on the line for us. And even in the most pressing situations, I have watched them act with grace, compassion, and professionalism. Our police officers value doing things the right way over the easy way every single time that I've encountered that choice. In the year ahead, I hope to continue to strengthen my relationship with them I plan on offering monthly video trainings on topics such as how big was that knife, when must I call 696 kids, trauma-informed interviewing, children with special needs, and why does the prosecutor keep asking me to describe the way things smell? The pandemic has changed the nature of the criminal cases that I'm prosecuting. I'm seeing a huge uptick in behavior that is rooted in unresolved mental health problems. People are stressed, people are out of work, they're having trouble getting to their doctors or getting their medication. People are missing the really important support systems of their friends and their families, and I can tell. The majority of my cases now include a component of working with the court to ensure that however we resolve a case, we're making sure defendants and victims are both getting the help that they need. We have a good relationship with the Domestic Violence Child Advocacy Center. They've provided us with an advocate who helps victims navigate the criminal justice process. My previous work as a guardian ad litem and a juvenile court practitioner have also allowed me to pull on some of the relationships and connections that I've maintained with nonprofits and mental health service providers. But as we go through what I believe is a mental health care crisis, it often doesn't feel like enough. So I do want to take this opportunity in this forum to point out the need for mental health services. That need is not sufficiently being met in our community and in many others. I enjoyed serving as an ex officio member for the Citizens Review Committee, and I want to extend my thanks to Councilwoman Berry for allowing me to be in that role. I admire the citizens who participated in that committee because they offered thoughtful critique and well-considered solutions at the same time. They were willing to engage in what sometimes can be very uncomfortable conversations about race and police practices. And they did so with grace and respect for one another, for our community, and for our police officers. I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that they started continue. On the topic of housing and building code enforcement, I have assessed, reviewed, and started an ambitious process to improve. A few weeks ago, at the request of our Vice Mayor, I sent an overview of housing cases for the past 3 years to all of you. And I can certainly resend it if anyone didn't get it or would like to re-review it. In the last 3 years, 43 cases were filed. Of those 43 cases, 8 were dismissed for a failure of service. Only 2 resulted in convictions, and the remaining cases were dismissals either for compliance, or I marked them unknown because I did not have written records from a prior prosecutor to tell me why they were dismissed. Based on practices and tradition, I could assume, or I think it's safe to conclude, that they were likely dismissed for compliance reasons as well. Now, I would like to discuss dismissals and the reasons for them in a way that's open and frank with you. Many of the dismissals that you are seeing in that report represent an effort by prosecutors, both me and my predecessor, to work with citizens to get compliance without subjecting them to convictions. We have liberally agreed to continuances, allowing citizens to keep investing in repairs to their properties. And we've been mindful of their means as they've done that. We have then dismissed the case when everything's finally in compliance. In those cases, although we ultimately did dismiss the charges, citizens walked away paying for court costs, and our city walked away benefiting by having those properties back in compliance with the code and maintaining our valuable housing stock. However, I also have to acknowledge that by allowing defendants to keep working on their cases and then dismissing without convictions, we have in some respects allowed defendants to keep the city paying for their delays. We have to pay our inspectors to keep reevaluating their progress. You have to keep paying me to go to court for you. If I press for convictions more quickly, I can ask the court to assess fines for those delays that can offset some of our costs that the city incurs when citizens and businesses don't keep up with their properties in the first place. The two convictions that you see in the report I gave you are from my taking this new approach to court. I want to make it clear that there's still a very delicate balance that I am working hard to maintain, because we're dealing with our citizens, not people from out of town. I have to make sure that I am continuing to assess with compassion what their means are. And a lot of times when I see them make good faith efforts, I continue to try to be generous with timing. But that also, I also have to acknowledge that once a conviction is achieved, even when it's very fast, the court then allows the probation department to oversee coming into compliance. And they have the ability to waive some of the fines if a person is bringing into compliance expeditiously. So just because you see a conviction, it doesn't mean that there's not still someone trying to look at that situation with an eye for compassion, as well as to motivate someone to get things fixed. Unfortunately, I must admit to you that there have been cases in which we've had to dismiss at the city's cost. Too many, in my opinion. 8 of them are marked as dismissed for failure of service. Over the past 3 years, the city has paid $1,600 in court costs, specifically because we did not obtain service on property owners successfully. I'm happy to provide anyone who's interested with a long, detailed explanation of how service works, why it's required. And that explanation involves a chalkboard and a flow chart. But suffice it to say, for the purposes of this presentation, it can be very complicated. And we'll probably never have 100% successful service rate for a variety of reasons. But after attending 2 trainings on code enforcement, consulting with Judge Montgomery, and very gratefully taking advantage of mentorship from Lisa Gold-Scott, the housing prosecutor in Shaker Heights, I have planned several ambitious changes on how we can handle our court cases for code violations. And I believe that they will improve service as well as compliance. I've recently started a new process to review our housing department's cases before we actually file in court. I am now asking for additional research from our staff to double check the sources of address information and research public records to confirm addresses. I'm also reaching out to property owners myself before we file in an attempt to get them to make repairs without having to come to court if they act quickly enough. And I have also made plans to hire a private process server only on a case-by-case basis for the exceptionally difficult cases where I need to have control over how that process is happening. I have also developed a new complaint that will more clearly allow a property owner to understand that this case is criminal in nature, that the crime is occurring every day that it exists, and that they will be fined for each of those days that the violation continues to exist. The current paperwork, I believe, does not adequately show that for someone without legal training. This change that I've made does mean that there's more voluminous paperwork, but it also brings us into compliance with case law and brings greater fairness to the process. Although many of those changes have already been implemented on my end, I am holding a training session next week to help our housing and building department staff make necessary changes on their ends as well. More than anything, I am so excited to have learned that the housing and building departments are still going to be transitioning to a new technology platform and that those efforts have been redoubled. I'll be joining them in their training so that I can better understand how they keep their records. What I have learned about that so far allows me to anticipate a vast improvement in how their work is done, how the records of that work is maintained, and then that allows me to take that information and give a higher quality case to the court when the need arises. That concludes my report to you, and I'll be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for our prosecutor?
You guys are an easy audience.
You're making it easy to be that audience. I'm really impressed so far with what I'm hearing and the proactive stance you're taking on a number of things and just taking the bull by the horns. It was probably long overdue. It was before my time, so I wasn't aware of that. But I feel good knowing that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Purdy.
I appreciate your thoughtful review of the processes and your thoughts for creating new methods of doing things. I appreciate that, but I really also appreciate the care you're taking to treat people with compassion, because that is a hallmark of our city. We just want to see things done. We don't really want to see people nailed, to put it in that fashion. So I appreciate that too. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Purdy. Any further questions or comments? Well, then I will just conclude by saying, Stephanie, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing to improve our law department and our prosecutorial standing here at the court. I know that it has not gone unnoticed by Judge Montgomery, the efforts that you are making, and we're getting positive feedback, in the community, and also I know that we are making strides in how we are handling housing cases in the city, and that is of utmost importance. Delighted to have you here on the team, and thank you. Keep up the good work, and don't be a stranger. You can come back before next year at this time.
Anytime you want me, you just let me know. We'll make it work.
Teasing a little bit, of course.
Thank you, guys.
We talk a lot more often than once a year. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Without further ado, then we will then move on to item B on the agenda, which is Resolution 2020-50, levying tax year 2020 special assessments in the amount of $4 million to the core retail parcel in the University Square development, permanent parcel number 721-01-001. This is listed on emergency, but I believe this was on first reading. Mr. McConville, can you clarify?
Correct, it's on first reading, but it's also on emergency in that when it is passed, it will go into effect immediately to enable us to meet the November 6th deadline set by the county.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, very good. So first reading and on emergency. I know that Lorna Gleason of UMB Bank is here. She is the trustee on behalf of the bondholders. I think there may be some others as well. But I did ask Ms. Gleason if she would come here to state to council, present as to the request here. So Mrs. Gleason, you may have the floor. Ms. Gleason.
Thank you. There are new faces here on the council. I know Mrs. Weiss and Mrs. Pardee were on the council during this entire time that we've been working on University Square, but the others are new. So welcome. The mayor has my telephone number and email if any other council members want to talk to me about this project and what we've been doing. But with respect to the motion that we have before you, when the bonds were issued back in 2001, the city entered into a cooperative agreement with the trustee under which it would automatically put on $4 million or less in special assessments on the core retail parcel in the event that there wasn't sufficient revenues to make bond payments. This is a way in which the bondholders have what I would call sort of excess collateral, but another lien in order to fully pay the bonds. For those who live in University Heights, you know that this project has been in default and has been an eyesore for the community for some time. And we have been working with two individuals in your community to redevelop that corner. I wish I wasn't here right now because that would mean that our deal had progressed further than it is right now. It is really no fault of anybody, but to get this transaction completed, we need the agreement of many, many parties, including Target and Macy's, the two also owners in University Square and co-partners with a developer on this project. Our developers who are looking to buy the parcel and redevelop it are in active negotiations with Target and Macy's as we speak, but they are not completed. So in order to do my job, which is to protect the bondholders and make sure that they have the liens that they are entitled to in accordance with the cooperative agreement, we need to have the city meet its contractual obligation to certify the special assessment on the core retail parcel in the amount of $4 million. If we have this transaction completed, we will work to satisfy that lien and eliminate that lien during the sales process. But until we're at that point, we need to have the lien put on. The city has agreed to do that in accordance with the cooperative agreement. And it was to be done in September, but the county had pushed out the date by which special assessments need to be certified to November 6th. So we're up against that deadline at this point. As I said, any of the new members or even the old members want to talk to me further about the project, I'm happy to have those discussions. But what's before you today is really a contractual agreement by the city that it would put on those assessments at the request of the trustee, and that is what the trustee is doing at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gleason. Ms. Gleason, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Gleason? Okay. Very good. Any questions or comments? Anybody have anything they'd care to say at this point with regard to this item? It is on first reading, so there are opportunities to inquire. And as Ms. Gleason said, I'm happy to provide her contact information.
Mr. McConville, Ms. Gleason made reference to the ability to remove the lien if, as the project moves forward. I understand that if the lien were to be in place, the project would not be able to go forward. What's the feasibility of removing that? Should it be added on to the property?
Sure, thanks for that question. The city actually has been in discussions both with the city prosecutor, the county prosecutor and the county land bank about that. The county has indicated to us that if the city passes an ordinance asking for the removal of the assessments will be removed promptly. Once the trustee is in a position to direct the city to remove the assessments, we can do that as we've done in the past.
And Ms. Gleason, and you are right, I am new to council. Thank you so much for joining us. I understand that council previously removed at the request of certain parties a lien that was already on the property, and now we're being asked to put it back on. Can you explain a little bit more about your thought process and timing around this?
Yeah, that lien, I think when you added it all up, was about $44 million. And needless to say, having a lien in that amount on the parcel was a difficult thing to overcome when talking to developers. And so the thought process was as if we had the lien removed, it would make the title look better for developers to become interested in it. I think, in fact, that happened. And as I said earlier, I didn't anticipate being here asking for this, or we really thought we would have been through this process by now, and we're not. So without a clear, a closing scheduled with all conditions met, and we're not there yet, we need to protect the bondholders by putting the lien on for the previous tax year. But we did, you're right, we removed about $44 million of liens, I think, earlier this year.
Yeah, that would have been, it was done at a special meeting in July of 2019.
2019. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Okay. If there is nothing, then this will have been considered to have been heard on first reading. It'll be on the agenda for the next council meeting on November 2nd. I want to thank Ms. Gleason for being here and presenting on this matter and answering questions. So thank you.
Thank you all. Good to see you again. Bye-bye.
Take care. Next item then is item C, ordinance 2020-49, amending the authorized permanent appropriations for current and other expenditures of the city of University of Ohio for the period commencing January 1, 2020 and ending December 31. This is an emergency. Mr. Kennedy, if you would take the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is simply amendment of the appropriations to give us spending authority to charge off expenses related to valid CARES Act funding expenses. As everybody knows, we have received 3 payments from Cuyahoga County as a pass-through for federal funding. $698,000 of that was received prior to this month. And then just last Friday, we received $461,000. So this ordinance just appropriates that money. What we're going to do is charge off some material and supply expenses related to COVID purchases, pretty much primarily by the safety forces. And then the remaining balance will be used to pay off safety forces salary and wage expense that could include actual salary, pension, medical insurance. Our goal here is to use up that 1.1 million that we've been awarded from the federal government through Cuyahoga County, so we don't have to return any back to the state. I'll be happy to take any questions. I believe I had asked Kelly to put this on an emergency so I can get it filed right away and then start charging off the majority of those payroll expenses.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennedy? If there are none, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance on emergency? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Blankfeld, is that a motion or is that?
No, it was not. It was moving my glasses.
Okay, so it's neither. Sorry about that. All right. You know what happens at an auction if you do that?
Exactly. It can be expensive.
All right. So is there a motion to adopt item C on emergency?
So moved on emergency.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any discussion? Well, seeing none, we'll take 2 votes. First is on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Rock, I'm sorry, Mr. Erdl,
Thank you. Yes, aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. And then on the main motion.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Ordinance passes. That moves us then to item D, ordinance 2020-51, approving paid administrative leave for furloughed administrative employees commensurate with the length of the furlough. This is on emergency. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. McConville, who would like to speak on this?
I can, well, go ahead, Luke.
I was going to flip you for it, but
That's okay.
this is an ordinance that will essentially fill in the pay gap for administrative employees who are placed on furlough. I believe the rationale behind this is that the city has received CARES Act funding, which will essentially supplement a lot of the payroll expenses that the city experienced, and this is a way to make certain administrative employees whole.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mr. Kennedy, anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Mayor, thanks. There's two sets of employees. One set are folks that are paid on an hourly rate. So they lost 4 hours of pay with the closure of City Hall every Friday. So to make them whole, that it will be a payment of 56 hours. That's why it's classified as administrative leave in the ordinance. Then the other half of the employees are salaried employees who incurred basically a salary reduction. The total of the two groups to make everyone whole is $44,682. The hourly people make up a little under $17,000 of that total. The salary folks are about $27,700 of that total.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy or Mr. McConville, or any comments, discussion? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. We have motion by Mrs. Weiss. May that be on emergency?
Yeah, an emergency.
Very good. We have a motion by Mrs. Weiss to adopt ordinance 2020-51 on emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll take the second by Mrs. Berry. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will take two votes. First is on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Okay, and on the main motion.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is item E, ordinance 2020-31, enacting codified ordinance section 280.04 entitled Notice of Property Transfers to the City Beautiful Corporation. This is on second reading. Mr. Gould, you are the sponsor of the legislation. Would you like the floor?
Thank you, Mayor. This legislation is a sister ordinance to the change to the board bylaws that the City Beautiful Corporation put into effect after a parcel of land which was initially used as a rain garden was transferred. I think members of council believe that there was some notification given and members of the public let us know otherwise. We were able to step that back and recover from the developer that property at the board level. They were very accommodating. We have a really wonderful partnership with a great organization that's invested in our city as a partner, and they were willing to give back that property, which they did. And so to allow for notice to be had of citizens who may be affected by certain transfers, even before it goes to the City Beautiful Corporation, this ordinance allows for that and calls for that notification to be had. I think one of the differences that you will see in this version of the ordinance to what you saw before was actually hashed out at the committee level. Thank you to Councilman Rock and Abstentia. And that was my understanding of the term public hearing was that this meeting qualifies as that. This is a public meeting and that's what we would be having. And others had a different understanding of that. And so what we've done is clarify the language to say that the notice that our citizens will receive before their council votes to transfer property to the City Beautiful Corporation is simply a specialized notice, giving them actual and constructive notice of a council meeting that they may come to, speak to their elected representatives, share their thoughts and opinions, desires for the property, so that all members of council, not just those who sit on the City Beautiful Corporation, have the opportunity to hear from citizens before that process completes. As it has been pointed out, later on in the process, it may come back to council after coming to before certain boards, but by that time, a great deal of time, energy, and expense has been put into each of the parcels. So this allows for that conversation ahead of time. Are there any questions? Then I would make a motion to pass as amended. Mayor, what's my number?
It is 2020-31.
2020-31.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gould to adopt ordinance 2020-31. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mrs. Weiss. Is there any discussion? Okay, I would like to seek a clarification. We did have the committee meeting, and I was looking at this earlier today. I'm not sure if this is what we intended to do or maybe it is, but I see that the last sentence of section 280.04 remains stricken. Is this correct, that we are striking the failure to deliver notices provided in this section shall not invalidate the public hearing or any transfer, conveyance, sale, or disposition of property to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation? Is it our intention to continue to keep that stricken?
Yes, I think after the committee meeting, Luke, you spoke with John, is that right, or wrote to John?
Correct.
And did he forward you his notes from the committee meeting, including the draft legislation?
There was email correspondence that was exchanged among Mr. Rock, me, and you, in which Mr. Rock indicated in a sentence or two that you wanted the public hearing language changed to the council meeting, and the other changes that had been previously expressed to be included. To be frank, I wasn't exactly sure what he meant, and so I made these changes, and then I recirculated to Mr. Rock and to you for your review. And I did get confirmation from Mr. Rock by email that this language reflected what he wanted to come out of committee.
And I reviewed it as well, and that's how I recall the legislation leaving his committee as well.
Okay. In the absence of this language, Mr. McConville, what would be the consequence or what are some of the consequences we could anticipate if notice is somehow defective, or somebody claims that notice is defective and they seek to take action against the city based on that?
Well, it's hard to predict. I suppose there could be a challenge to the legitimacy of a transfer. I think the city would have arguments that it could make to counter that, including, number one, that all citizens should have notice of council meetings since they're held regularly and the agendas are posted on our website. But number two, you can try to undo a notice issue through ratification and or making sure that there's participation in the process at the next level, which would be the CIC level. It does, I guess, open the door if there's a failure of notice. I would like to think that a court would not find against the city, but it's hard really to predict. If this were a zoning ordinance per se, I could be more definitive in saying it would create a big problem. There are cases out there, as I previously indicated, that say that failure to provide notice to neighboring property owners in a zoning setting creates a fundamental defect in the zoning decision that can then be unwound by a court.
We have similar language to this in other parts of our code, but we don't have it here. So are we not opening ourselves up to argument that even this provision could be cause for reversing a transaction, even tearing down that which has been built?
Again, it's hard to predict that because this is an unusual notice requirement. The notice requirements that we have in our code that go out to property owners that are located within a certain radius of an affected property relate to planning commission meetings and Board of Zoning Appeals hearings. We are enacting a notice requirement that, by law, we're going to be obligated to follow. There isn't any real case law for me to point to tell you exactly how a challenge to a notice defect as it relates to this particular requirement will turn out in a court. As I said, I think, if I'm arguing this case in front of a court, I'm going to point out that we're talking about notice of a council meeting that all citizens get with respect to each and every council meeting. We're required by law to post our agendas at least 24 hours in advance pursuant to notice provisions that are contained in our code. And presumably we're doing that for each and every meeting. And we can fall back on that. But we are, creating an affirmative obligation, as Mr. Gould points out, to give, actual notice to certain property owners, and failure to provide that notice, at least creates an argument as to the legitimacy of any action taken. So, I like to think that courts will be practical. If a council ratifies something that's already occurred or indicates that it will, pass another ordinance in compliance with the notice, that they wouldn't undo a project, but it does open the door for an argument.
Well, I'm not necessarily concerned about council passing an ordinance that would undo a project as much as I'm concerned about a recalcitrant neighbor who is trying to disrupt a project that is for the betterment of the greater community.
Yeah, and so let me better articulate what I mean. What I'm saying is that if there's a failure to provide notice and city council is indicating that one way or another it will ratify whatever action was taken, it'll ratify the transfer either by passage of an ordinance or a motion, I would hope a court would be turning to that litigant and saying, you really don't have recourse here. They're going to go ahead and ratify what they did. You already had notice that there was a council meeting taking place because it was posted. I mean, those are the arguments that I think a law director would be making on behalf of the municipality. And I do think those are good arguments. I just, am reluctant to tell you there won't be any consequence because we are creating a notice requirement that as a matter of law, we'll be obligated to follow.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. McConville. It looks like Mrs. Weiss, did you have a question?
It's just more of a comment. I mean, we went through this, during the committee meeting. We want to, pass this ordinance because there was an issue in the past, and we don't want that to happen again. And if we have this initial notice, we won't come into the issue of what happened in the CIC. And I think this is just a result of something that in retrospect, we probably should have done in the first place. So you know, I'm going to vote for this. We really hashed it out during the committee meeting, so.
Mr. McConville wasn't at the committee meeting, which is why.
No, yeah, no, I know, but he's had conversations with Councilman Gould and Councilman Rock, you know, after that, so.
Sure, but we haven't had anything on the record. And thus we're here. That's why I asked. Thank you.
So, I mean, I just listened to the prosecutor talk about service. Do those rules fall into this notice requirement?
It's a little different because we know by definition where the folks are who we need to serve. So if we, as long as we're creating a record of having either mailed or delivered the notices to the addresses that are located within the specified radius, then we will have satisfied our notice requirement.
The only thing that gives me a little concern is the fact that it says to the owner, who might not be the person in the property. Doesn't it say that?
It does.
Yes, mailed notices to the owner, the record owner.
You know, I would, so this issue does arise in connection with building code citation issues. You know, the citations themselves are considered legitimately served if they're mailed to the residents, irrespective of whether the owner lives there or not. I think that that's likely how that would be interpreted. I mean, I suppose we could further clarify that in the ordinance. I think that we've had some prior discussion about this, and I believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Gould, but I believe that you have articulated the, you know, desire to make sure that it's the owner of the property who's you know, being mailed the notice. I don't know if you care to comment on that or you know, what your thoughts.
Well, I thought whatever the process is that we choose, be it hand delivery to the front door, mailed notice to the person living there, mailed notice to the physical address without a specific individual identified, or mailed notice to the property owner. My thought is that the ordinance should spell out what the notice requirement is, and notice requirement, as we've worked through and in the various sessions that we've had here, is to the record owner of the real property, because we have a known individual, a recorded address, and the ability to mail to that recorded address. And so if there's a different practice that makes sense, we certainly could place that in there instead. So to the mailed notices to the physical address, it would be another way. But I think we've already, like you said, we've already gone over this, and this is what was discussed in previous iterations.
Yeah, this mirrors our BZA wording for that notice, correct? It says owner in BZA, I'm pretty sure. I mean, not in BZA, in you know, other types of notifications.
I think that is correct.
I know in other communities, when projects are built, my former employer, we would have to send notice legally to those who were adjacent by however many feet. And it had to be the property owner, not whomever happened to be living there at the time. And then the council meeting or the public hearing was the notice, like, you know, the mayor was talking about. So those that are interested parties or live nearby or have, you know, the ability to come and hear what's going on and comment. But the actual notice would go to the property owner, who would be actually affected by a sale or change of
Yeah,
ownership.
the record owner is the term that we use in our other building and zoning notice requirement provisions. I know there's quite a bit of case law out there that says that a zoning notice is valid if it is delivered to the property. And I think, Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that has been our practice for a very long time. When we have a radius requirement, we are sending the notice to the property.
Correct. That would be correct.
And in some cases, we hand deliver them. And I know that courts have deemed zoning notices to be valid even in cases of vacancy where the notice is essentially posted or taped to the front door. So, I mean, as a best practice, I think, and in a desire to, acknowledge the sensitivity of CIC matters, we can look up, who's the owner of record. That's easy enough to find usually, and make an effort to contact those people. But I think it will be deemed sufficient notice if notice is delivered to the actual addresses within the radius. And that's consistent with zoning law.
Just for record, I usually go by the county's website to pull the addresses.
Very good. Any further questions, comments? Well, we do have a motion and a second. So if there's nothing further, then Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion passes. Ordinance 2020-31 passes. Thank you. Next then is item F, motion for the approval of the collective bargaining agreement. Well, before I read this item, Mr. McConville, should we entertain a motion to enter executive session, or should we read the item first?
Tomato.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the item. I'll go tomato. Letter F, motion for the approval of the collective bargaining agreement CBA with Fire Department IAFF Local 974. Mr. Iosu, our Labor Counsel, is on the Zoom call. I would suggest that we move for an executive session briefly to be briefed by Labor Counsel with regard to the proposed CBA. There is plenty of additional business to occur, so if you are here observing, I would urge you to bear with us while we take a brief executive session, and then we'll be back to continue the work of the meeting. Is there a motion to go to executive session to discuss the proposed collective bargaining agreement with the Fire Department IAFF Local 974?
Mayor, also move.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Bleinfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Erdl. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, we will enter into an executive session. Mrs. Thomas, will need to be members of council, myself, and Mr. Iosu, and Mr. McConville. You could send us to a breakout room.
Yeah, I made you co-host because I can't bring you back out.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm waiting for the alert that does that.
I did that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, I am not getting, I do not have the breakout room option on my toolbar.
I can make you host for the moment then.
Let's try that.
I'll make you.
There it is. Very good. Thank you. All right, so I will assign the breakout room. One moment. Make sure I'm not missing anybody. Barbara Blankfeld, Jeremy Iosu, Justin, Luke, Michelle, Philip's iPad, Robert Perko, Sandra Berry, Susan Pardee. I knew I was missing somebody. There we go. All right. I'm opening the room and you may accept the invitation.
Kelly, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm gonna step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Do you want a beer or anything while I'm gone?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Hey, bring one over to Silsby Road, 4446 Silsby, dude.
We know where you're going. We know.
Have dinner.
Well, I've been drinking water, so so I teach school, so I have to stay hydrated,
Yeah, I got my drink right here.
You call it world class. We call it Kent State. Nationally ranked high quality programs and faculty.
I'd say give them about a half hour.
You call it success. We call it Kent State. More than 10,000 career ready graduates.
Just to let you guys know, I think we're still recording and we're still live on YouTube.
Uh-oh.
We call it Kent State, awarding nearly 400 million.
Just to let everybody know.
Kent State is committed to making college accessible.
Mayor, we'll need a motion to resume the regular session.
Very good. Is there a motion to resume regular session?
Also move, Mayor.
Very good. We have a motion to resume regular session by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
You're muted, Phil.
Aye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gould. You're muted. Mr. Gould,
Okay, very good. We're back into regular session. We are still on item F, the motion for the approval of the collective bargaining agreement CBA with Fire Department IAFF Local 974. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Very good. We have a motion to adopt by, I think that was Mrs. Weiss. Very good. By Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Is there any discussion? I'd be remiss if I didn't say this on the record, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I want to thank Mr. Iosu for his work on this agreement. I especially want to thank the negotiating team, Mr. Canner, president of the union, as well as the rest of the team, for working with us so diligently. We have a great relationship with our fire union, and we have an agreement here which is beneficial to everyone involved and considers the challenges that we've had in 2020 and have going forward. So I want to thank Mr. Canner and all the members of the negotiating team and everybody in the union who supported this. So thank you. You have my deepest gratitude. Is there any further discussion? Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. CBA is approved.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay,
Night.
thank you. Next then is item G, which is a motion to accept bid for the 2020-1 citywide fall tree planting program and enter into contract with Greenleaf Group Inc. of Valley City as the best and lowest bid in the amount not to exceed $38,961. Mr. Picorni, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. On October 2nd, Friday, we had opened up bids and we had two bidders, Greenleaf Group of Valley City and Johnson's Landscaping of Mentor. Both of these bidders had worked with the city before. Johnson actually did the last 2 years of planting. Greenleaf Group had done 2 years prior to that, so we've worked with both of these contractors. Greenleaf Group was the low, as the mayor had indicated, at $38,961. That's for planting 117 trees at various locations around the city. And I'm recommending them as the lowest and best bidder. Funds are available in our Tree Improvement Fund 205.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Any questions for Mr. Picorni? If there are none, is there a motion to accept the bid?
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion by Mr. Gould to accept the bid. Thank you. Is there a second? That Mrs. Blankfeld, you're muted. Okay, looks like a second by Mrs. Blankfeld.
It is indeed.
Very good. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is none, Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next is item H, motion to accept bid for the 2020-2 tree pruning and removal program and enter to contract with Van Kuren Services, Inc. of Newberry, Ohio is the best and lowest bid and amount not to exceed $54,681. You have the floor.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is our annual tree pruning program. There are approximately 627 trees in this program. It's going to be various places around the city. I attached a list of all of those locations, and we will be posting this on the web as well. Van Kuren Services was the low bidder at $54,681. They have performed this same contract before. Similar to the last contract we were talking about, Parks Tree has had it the last 3 years. Van Kuren had it the year before that, so they have been working in the city and they're aware of our requirements. I'm recommending that Van Kuren be awarded the contract in $54,681, and funds again are available in our Tree Improvement Fund 205.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Are there any questions for Mr. Picorni? Just if you would clarify, the city has used Van Kuren before, is that correct?
That is correct. They had the contract 3 years ago.
And Parks Trees have a contract in the meantime?
That's correct.
Okay. Very good. Any, Mr. Gould, was that you?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Picorni, can you just, I know sometimes it's confusing or upsetting to citizens when this occurs, and we kind of post this, and I think this spreadsheet that we publicize, or at least gets put up on the website or posted somewhere, you know, it's in our packet today. Can you help us understand what the words mean at the top of that spreadsheet so that people can better understand what's going to happen? You know, they look on this spreadsheet, citizen goes to their street, sees their address on here. When we say train, raise, reduce, clean, inspect, remove, I mean, I know what remove means, and inspect it makes me think you're going to look at it. When you say train, raise, reduce, and clean, what do you mean?
Each one of those items is a little bit different. Train means it's a smaller diameter tree, a young tree. And by training it, it means that they will pick a main leader on the tree so that you don't have a split in the trunk at a low level. Training will also include reducing the tree, and there's percentages. Generally, it's in the range of 18 to 20% of the volume of the tree, so they'll prune those limbs out. They'll also try to pick the limbs that give it a shape. Rather than having two limbs that are crossing close to one another, they'll pick one of those out. So that's training. Raising would be along the sidewalk and or the street side. We have a minimum of 10 feet on the sidewalk side, a minimum of 15 feet on the road side of the tree. Those are going to be larger trees that you can trim to that level. Generally, the smaller ones won't be protruding over the street like that, so they won't need that type of pruning at this point. But the larger ones that have larger limbs in the 8 to 10 foot level over the road, those limbs will need to be removed so that trucks and other vehicles won't hit them. The reduce is a category where possibly the tree, again, has a lot of crossing branches or is a very dense tree. They will reduce the number of branches in the tree to get the other branches to grow as the main leaders, and therefore, again, defining the shape of the tree better. Clean will be probably mostly our large trees. Those are going to be like the oaks this year on Bushnell between Warrensville and Renford. Those trees haven't been looked at or touched in about 6 to 7 years. So they'll be climbing those trees. They'll be inspecting the crotches, looking for squirrel damage. They'll be cleaning the tree by taking out any dead wood. So any dead branch that they find up there, ends of things. So the cleaning is going to be mostly dead wood removal. And the inspect I explained already, and the remove, like you said, is kind of self-evident. We're going to take the tree down.
Wonderful. And if citizens have specific concerns about the trees on at their property, are they able to contact the service department?
yes, they can contact me in the service department,
Thank you, sir.
certainly.
Yes, I should also point out that we have had a program this administration has since I got here, where we also send letters out to the properties where these are occurring. These are strictly a courtesy, but it's to promote the greater understanding of what's to be done and to provide an opportunity to ask questions. In addition to having it on the website, Mr. Cook usually coordinates for your help.
Might I just clarify that just a bit?
Please.
We have been sending out letters to those that are receiving removals for those trees that are going to be removed. And yes, we will be doing that again.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the bid here in item H?
So moved.
Very good. Motion by Mr. Erdl. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion? If there is none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould. You're muted, but I got you.
You're becoming a mouth reader.
Yes, I am.
Okay, motion carries. Next is item I, motion to accept fiscal year 2019 Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant AFG in the amount of $121,085.71 with a city's match of $6,054.29 for a total amount of $127,140. Chief Perko, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This grant was written as we discovered a need to update our technical rescue equipment. When we took an inventory of this back in 2018, we recognized that most of the equipment we had was not kept up to standards, past expiration dates, and we had to take it and decommission it immediately. Some of the remaining equipment that we do have that is still in service was also from a grant back in 2013 from the FEMA AFG grant, in fact. That was also geared towards technical rescue and automobile extrication equipment. The equipment that was decommissioned, we did not have funding available to purchase this. This is equipment that our technical rescuers use that are part of the regional technical rescue team that started back in the mid-90s and has grown today to what is called East Tech. We have 5 members on the department that are part of that team. And should an incident in University Heights occur and they are on duty, they would be able to start implementing best practices associated with technical rescue if they had equipment available for them. So this grant is being funded for the equipment, for them to have starter equipment in all disciplines of technical rescue, and the training to do so for the rest of our members that are not on the technical rescue team. So this is basic awareness training so that basically they can keep themselves out of danger during a technical rescue situation and assist those that are specially trained that are on the team. The funding covers equipment, training, as well as backfill and overtime for the members to attend the training. There's a 5% match from the city totaling $6,054.29 to the funding that FEMA is providing of $121,085.71.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? Comments?
Just always grateful. I say it every time you come before us with something like this. pennies are thin on the ground in a usual circumstance, not what we've been through now, and your continued efforts to keep your officers as well trained and as well supplied with the equipment they need to protect all of us, and doing so in a way that is saving us money that needs to be spent elsewhere for you. It's always appreciated. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Captain Boylan for his
I was
work
going
on
to
this.
say, yeah, thank you.
Very good. Anything further? And if not, is there a motion?
Also move, Mayor.
Very good. Motion to accept by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item J, motion to accept Ohio EMS equipment grant for EMS equipment for active shooter incidents. Rescue Task Force RTF in the amount of $2,846.43. Chief Perko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, each year the Department of Public Safety Division of EMS offers this grant opportunity for equipment to aid us in our EMS role in the fire service. The last 2 years we applied for this and were successful. This is the third year we are also being awarded for equipment known as Rescue Task Force gear. This is the ballistic vest and ballistic helmets that the paramedics will use going into an active threat situation. A lot of the training that we spent back doing in 2019. So this will complete the outfitting of our apparatus for the vests and helmets for our personnel. And there is no match on this grant.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief Perko. Any questions for Chief Perko? Comments?
No, the only comment is I know that it's becoming the norm now that our firefighter paramedics are also having to enter active shooter situations, where it used to be they were sort of, after the fact coming in and attending to those that were injured or whatever. So the fact that you even have to be doing this, I regret, but I'm grateful that you found a way to obtain those things so that you're all kept safe.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a motion to accept this grant?
Also move, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Berry. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Erdl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item K, which was amended to be ordinance number 2020-52, an ordinance amending codified ordinance section 1422.05 entitled Fees to update the city's contractor registration fees. Mr. McConville, would you give us a brief introduction as to what this ordinance is for?
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward in connection with the suggested schedule of updated permit fees in our building department ordinances. This category was also set forth, and I did not include it in the other ordinance because it relates to a separate chapter of ordinances. And so for purposes of simplicity and an abundance of caution and to not be violating the single subject rule, I separated it out as a separate category of updated fee for council's consideration.
Okay, very good. This is a matter which would be referred to the Building and Housing Committee. Mr. McConville, is that something we should be taking a motion on?
Yes.
Very good. Is there a motion to refer this matter to the Building and Housing Committee for further consideration?
Also move, Mayor.
Very good. Motion by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, please call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Ertl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. This item will then be referred to the Building and Housing Committee. They do have a committee meeting scheduled for, I believe it's Thursday of next week. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
for the 29th. It's got quite a few items on it already. Hopefully, there's a couple that have been discussed for a great deal of time now. So hopefully they will be moved along. If not, this will obviously be considered at the next one.
Okay. Well, as Mr. McConville explained, the item that's already on the agenda with respect to building department fees, this was a split. So this is the registration fees as opposed to the other, which we did not amend to hear on first reading this evening.
Right.
But they're all the same agenda item, at least as presently constituted on that agenda. Okay. All right, very good. Motion carries and it's referred. The next item on the agenda then is item L, motion to hold an executive session immediately following this regular meeting for the purpose of discussing personnel, legal, and/or real estate matters. I do not believe there's anything further we need to have executive session on at this time, having had the one already for the labor update. Nobody else has anything, then we will let this matter pass and we will go then to director's reports. Director of Finance, Mr. Kennedy, you have the floor.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Mayor. A couple items is, as I said earlier, when we considered the appropriation amendment, we've received a total of $1.1 million in CARES Act funding through Cuyahoga County from the federal government. So I'll get that appropriation amendment down to the county tomorrow and then start doing the adjustments to make sure that we see all that. I think I sent a note out to everybody a few weeks ago when they changed the latest revisions to the CARES Act spending plans. The filing date changed to, the encumbrance date changed to November 20th. Originally, it was going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow's deadline is for reporting through September 30th to the Office of Budget Management in Columbia. That report this afternoon, so we're good on that from that standpoint. And I'll keep everybody up to date as we proceed. You will start seeing at the end of the October reports movement from the general fund of those expenses over to that new fund that we established, which is Fund 297. So I'll explain that when it does happen, so everybody keep their eye out for that. I mentioned at the last council meeting that the state auditors had indicated they were going to put the 2021 financial audit out to bid. And I did receive the paperwork on that. So I have to fill out a questionnaire, return it to the state auditors, but they will be contracting that out to an independent CPA firm. I'll let you know as soon as that process gets started. I have some numbers, year-to-date collections for our city income tax. We through September, we caught up fairly significantly. We're a little bit dropped down back behind in October. As of today, we have $8,033,269 collected by Rita through today. Through October, so that's about 10 more days, when you compare to last year. Last year's number was $8,557,150. That's a difference of $523,880, which equates to about 6.1%. So I'll update you in the remaining 10 days as we get closer to that collection total for the month. Normally October, you would figure you would get a little spike because it is the extension month for federal returns from a normal filing period in April. As you're aware, we moved that, the federal government moved all the federal filing dates, and state and local dates moved commensurate with that to July 15th. So not too sure that it's going to impact our collections by the end of the month. But we did come through fairly well in September. We're hoping that we will cut that gap, that $523,000 gap, through the next 10 days or so. We're going to start working on the budget for 2021. There's a lot of challenges this year. You know, we have the COVID situation. There's the election coming up. There's the uncertainty about the CARES Act money for next year. But we'll do our best to put something together so that we can get that process rolling sometime in November. We have had several discussions on a director level with all the departments. So we're going to get all the department directors involved in both short-term and long-term planning. The longer-term planning will be more of a capital variety. And I'm still waiting to get some 2021 revenue information from the Regional Income Tax Agency. So I'm hoping that's coming sometime soon for their outlook and projections on next year. Other than that, I'll have the October financial statements done this week. We were able to close those books last week, so we'll get that wrapped up and get that out to you by the end of this week. And unless anybody has any questions or anything, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kennedy? All right, very good. Thank you. Moving on, Director of Law, Luke McConville.
Just one item to report on tonight, Mayor. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the city has received 4 fair housing complaints. We did receive an answer to one of those complaints this week, and I think it's likely that multiple complaints will be referred on to the conciliation process. And that does create the possibility of an eventual referral to the Fair Housing Board. And so just glancing at the fair housing ordinances, I would encourage you, Mayor, to make an appointment to that board. You know, in the near future, that appointment comes up for council approval. But it would be good to have a fully seated board in the event that we end up referring matters to that board, and that would probably be in a time frame of December.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, that gives me what I.
We will. I believe we will be conducting the conciliations at some point in November. The timelines that are set forth in the fair housing ordinances are fairly narrow. And then if an agreement is reached between the parties, that's great. But if not, you know, we would want the Fair Housing Board to be able to hold hearings on those matters.
Very good. We will get somebody before the council then in November. Anything else?
That concludes my report.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. McConville? All right. Moving on, Public Safety, Police, Chief Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight I'll be reporting on 2 matters. First is regarding our annual Solon jail contract. We just finished our first of second year of our jail contract with Solon. At this time, our inmates booked number is below the benchmark that now gives us an $8,000 credit for this year. So Solon will be crediting the city that $8,000 over the next 2 pay periods. Second item to report on is regarding training for our officers. I've spoken on some of the different types of training, obviously, the officers get annually and every other year. Specifically, our officers train for 8 hours minimum per year on use of force and de-escalation. Every other year, we have additional supplemental training that covers de-escalation and responding to mental health crises. At this point, the administration has determined that we have to continue this type of training for officers and enhance it further. There is training that's known as CIT training or crisis intervention team training. Currently, the county's offering this type of training. It's a 40-hour certificate. This training provides enhanced de-escalation techniques during crises in the field. It also covers mental illness, signs and symptoms and treatments, overview of veteran affairs systems, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury services and resources, overview of crisis services, housing and emergency resources in the county, as well as the communication and de-escalation principles. So there's discussion and some best practice that's being created where it's identifying that you know, if law enforcement agencies can reach a threshold where 20% or higher of their officers become CIT trained certified, it will likely have a very positive impact in the field and on those who are providing service too. So at this time, our most recent member of the department attended this 40-hour training block 2 weeks ago. We're currently at about 10% of our agency having CIT certificates, and administratively we will continue down a path of getting at least 20 to 30% of our agency with a CIT certificate and curriculum in an effort again to hopefully impact the services positively that we're providing in the field. And that completes my report.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Chief? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Chief. Next is Public Safety, Fire. Chief Perko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 items to report tonight, Council. First one, we're just continuing our ongoing analysis of the pandemic and how it affects our operations in the fire department. You know, we had originally thought that our incident call volume was going to be trending lower, and as I reported a couple months back, it's actually trending higher this year than it was last year, both in our regular response incidents as well as COVID-related incidents. Doing everything in our power to make sure that our staff and workforce is staying healthy, keeping themselves, the ambulance, and the firehouse clean to limit any exposure issues so that we have full staffing to provide services to the community in this stringent time of need. So we thank you for your approval for all the PPE with the CARES money previously. We're much better outfitted now than we were when this started, that's for sure. Second item to report is that we are still currently flushing hydrants in the city. We were starting on the west end, moving east, and we're about halfway through the city at this point. A couple slowdowns due to weather, but we'll be continuing through the week and likely into next week. So we just ask residents that they continue to run their water if they notice that it's brown prior to doing any laundry or doing any cooking. Last item to report, last meeting, I had mentioned that we would be doing a virtual open house for Fire Prevention Week, which was 2 weeks ago. We posted daily posts on our social media page on fire safety tips and engagements with firefighters doing training, tours of the fire apparatus as well as the firehouse. Got a lot of positive feedback out of that, and I'd like to especially thank firefighter Schuster and firefighter Neese. A lot of the firemen did a lot of work for these videos, but them two in particular are really what pulled it off. So I think they did a great job. And That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Perko? All right, moving on then, we go to service. Mr. Picorni.
Thank you, Mayor. Several items to report to council tonight. Curbside loose leaf collection has begun. I'd like to remind both the public and neighbors that leaves need to remain on the tree lawn and out of the street. Brush is also being collected in that same program. That's to be cut and bundled in 4-foot lengths, not more than 50 pounds, so that our staff can pick that up and collect it. The brush and leaf collection will continue through the second week of December, but I urge everybody to get it out there when it's ready to be out. Don't wait for the last week of December or the last week in December to do that. Secondly, council had asked me to report back regarding catch basin road repairs, curb drain repairs. The service department has completed catch basin repairs that seem to have been an issue in the past. So that is done. Road repairs are complete to date with the list we had previously. However, Cleveland Water has dug a few more that will be repaired before winter. Curb drain repairs are ongoing. We will continue with the dips and holes next to the curbs into the winter and through the fall. Our household hazardous waste collection and paper shredding event is scheduled for Friday, the 30th, and Saturday, the 31st of October, the end of this month. Friday, we will be collecting household hazardous waste. We will be open in the service garage for driving through. Collecting items, we'll be putting them in our recycle center. We'll have the recycle truck there as well as other drop-off. On Saturday, the 31st, we will have the paper shredding truck on site from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. for people that want to drop off and watch their paper securely be shredded into a truck. I'd also like to report that sanitary and storm sewer cleaning and TV work is now complete for our contract this year with the city, and catch basin cleaning is also completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Are there any questions for Mr. Picorni? All right, seeing none, we will move along. Building, housing, and development. I just want to make a brief announcement that I think most council members are already aware that Ruth Griswold, who has been with the city for 30 years, is retiring. She has been an admin in the building department for many years, and her service to our community and to the residents, to the landlords, to the contractors, to everyone involved is noted, and we are all grateful for everything she has done for us here in the city of University Heights. So we will be recognizing her before she leaves, but I wanted to make mention here for the record, especially somebody who has devoted and dedicated so much time to us. It's worthy of note here. So thank you. We will then move on to the city engineer, which is Joe Chuney. Mr. Chuney, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just two quick items tonight. The Laurelhurst Waterline Project, all the houses are hooked up. The contractor was removing the above ground bypass piping today, kind of a bad weather day. Hoping to be done with the pavement by the end of the week, but we'll see what the weather does for us. We got about a week's worth of restoring the pavement, and that project will be completed. We are also looking into the pedestrian crosswalk signals there at Green Road and Baintree. We're getting quotes from Signal Service to hopefully upgrade the controller and get those operational. So, end of report.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chuney. Any questions for Mr. Chuney? Seeing none. Communications and civic engagement, Mr. Cook.
Good evening. The census finished up on October 15th at 11:59 p.m. And our final numbers, we are ahead of where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had a self-report number of 71.5%. We got that up to 76% this year, in obviously less than ideal conditions with the pandemic. Where census divides the city into 4 census tracts, and we were up all across the city, including the central part of the city, which includes most of the off-campus housing for John Carroll. So the fact that we were even able to improve a little bit there, I think is a good sign. Secondly, the city magazine Mosaic fall issue is out. It was mailed to residents about a week and a half ago, and it is also in restaurants and businesses across town. And finally, I'd like to just call to your attention, Cleveland Scene is having their Best of Cleveland contest. They started this in March, and obviously they put it on the back burner once the pandemic started. But I think it's important to, take a look at it, look at the finalists, and there are a bunch of businesses from University Heights in there. And I think it'd be a nice thing to do just to show them a little love and a little support. Everyone's suffering. And I think, a little nudge getting in places like Tracy's and Bialys and Jack's and WJCU, which is the radio station on campus, and Flowerville, get them to win so they can put that sticker on their door that they're the best bagels or best deli or whatever in the Cleveland area. That could help them with their business. So, usually it's just kind of for bragging rights, but I think this is also I think this year it's something that could help them out financially. So I would encourage everyone to go to our Twitter account and our Facebook page, click on that link, and support our local businesses. And that's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cook? All right, moving along then, we have economic development. Mrs. Drucker.
Good evening. The first one is right now, this is around the time where we start our Small Business Saturday promotion. That's the promotion through American Express. But if you recall from last year, I kind of took that idea and shifted gears and was doing more of a shop local, because we have a lot of Jewish store owners that couldn't be open on a Saturday. So to be inclusive of everybody, that's why we switched gears to our shop local. And so it happens though this year that American Express is also changing gears, and instead of focusing on one day, they are also now promoting shop local because of the pandemic, and just to encourage shopping for these small businesses throughout the holiday season. So that their new promotion kind of really blends with what we've already been doing, and it works in conjunction with that shop local decal that we had printed up that's been getting distributed to the business owners in our community. So that will be gearing up, and then we'll be also, I'm working with the chamber. We're going to do, we are going to be promoting businesses within our communities, but that'll be distributed throughout all of the communities in the chamber. So that would cover 6 different cities. Secondly, with University Corners, if any of you have been up that way, there has been, if you remember DKC Holdings, they are the new owners. They're out of Florida. They started some exterior renovations on the, they're really, right now they're working on the columns, and then they'll be working, doing some work on the parking lot. And just so you know, the BMV over there did shut down. That was expected. That we kind of heard those rumblings even before COVID. So the owners don't have, they're talking to some other businesses to replace that spot, but right now that's part of the renovation area. And then we are getting a new restaurant. It is Clean Eating LLC is their formal name, but it's Clean Eating. It's a sandwich shop. It's going to be located. Right now they're doing some demolition of the interior and some remodeling of the interior, and that's at 2263 Warrensville Center Road. And that is not the spot right next to Bialys, because Bialys now owns that vacant spot, but it's the third one over from the corner. So so they should be opening in a couple months here. And that's all I have tonight.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Drucker. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Drucker? Okay, very good. Then we will continue on to the reports from standing committees. Building and Housing Chair Barbara Blankfeld.
Nothing new to report, Mayor. We do have a meeting of the committee scheduled for the 29th from 7 to 8 p.m.
Very good. Community Outreach, Sue Pardee.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Economic Development, Mr. Rock is not here. He's been excused. Does anybody from that committee have a report this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Finance, Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There will be a Finance Committee meeting at the end of November, early December. I'm just confirming the poll with the clerk. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Recreation, Mr. Ertl.
Thank you, Mayor. We're having a Recreation Committee meeting this Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll be looking at what we'll be able to do for rec next year with COVID. So everybody's welcome, and that's it.
That's this Thursday?
Yes, it is. 22nd.
Okay. All right, very good. Safety, Mrs. Berry.
The Citizens Advisory Committee is having a meeting on Wednesday. This will be our first time back since we made our presentation at the council meeting in September.
Okay, very good. That's this Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Service Utilities, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. Next week, on Wednesday, the 28th, we have the second in our rounds of public hearings, where we will welcome comment from citizens of University Heights related to the garbage study, which is currently under consideration.
Okay, very good. That's next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
That's correct.
All right, very good. And then Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Weiss.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, no report. Very good. We are at the end of our regular agenda and reports. There being no further executive session, the next item up would be a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Very good. Motion to adjourn by Justin Gould.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Pardee,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Ertl,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. We are adjourned. We are back here on November 2nd for our next regular meeting. Have a good night, everybody. Be well and be safe. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Aye.